who's now 18 months old. And back before he was even born, I spent a lot of time thinking about how I wanted to raise him. What were my priorities? What was I willing to let go of? One of the things I knew we were going to hit on from the start was cleaning up. That's because I spent a lot of time in the classroom seeing kids who didn't know how to clean up after themselves. And they were the same kids who had trouble organizing their thinking. That's because cleaning up is more than just a way to keep your house looking nice. It's also a learning activity that requires self-discipline, emotional regulation, skill development, and a lot of processing. Think about it. To clean up, a child needs to be able to create a mental picture of where things go, sort items into categories, think about space and placement, put things into containers, and take multiple steps to complete the task. So I've really shifted my own attitude towards cleaning up. I no longer think of it as something that we need to get through as quickly as possible to check off to move on to the next thing. I've started to think of it as another learning activity that is just as important as anything I put on the shelves or set up for him. At 18 months, we've gotten to a point where Remy is pretty helpful. I'd say he does about 75 to 80% of the tidying up after playing. How did we get to this point? Here's the 10 strategies I used that I found pretty helpful. Let's take a look. When he was really little, I wanted Remy to see the process of cleaning up as part of our daily lives. So I sang the cleanup song and I cleaned up everything that we had played with in front of him so that he would see the process again and again and again. By the time he got old enough to help out, he knew what he was doing. At around 6 or 7 months, when he could sit up well and was much better with his hands, we started to introduce the idea of putting things into baskets. Then with each stage of his development, he's slowly built up the skills necessary to really clean up. The amount of help that I give during the cleanup process has decreased dramatically over the past couple months. He can now do a cleanup pretty much on his own, but I do guide him through the process using oral cues and gestures. But there are some moments or even whole days where I take on the brunt of work again, and that's okay. There will be times where he's hungry or tired or teething or otherwise overwhelmed. I just have him watch me do it and I talk him through the process. Some parents and preschools expect a child to put away an activity immediately upon finishing it. Other parents have a much higher threshold for mess and they only expect a child to clean up once a day. Whatever your expectation is, that's what's right for your family. The important thing is to be consistent. We expect cleanup to happen before any transition. He can pull out all of the activities and toys, combine them, come back to them, or abandon them. But then everything must be put back in its home before we move on to the next part of our day. And this doesn't just go for toy cleanup. The expectation is that he will help clean up after any activity we engage in, whether that's eating or diaper change or digging in the garden. Caring for our home is something we all actively are involved in all of the time. Now there are a few exceptions to this next rule, like when we go to the doctor's office, but for the most part I like to wait for a pause in activity before starting the cleanup process. That's because when I interrupt him, I'm doing a few things. One, I'm sending a clear message that whatever it is that is important to him, that he's working on, it's not that important to me. Two, I'm breaking his concentration, which is something that I'm actually very keen on developing. And three, I'm setting myself up for a battle. If he's working on something, he's much more likely to fight the process of cleaning up than if he has stopped and is ready to move on. I don't ask Remy if he'd like to clean up or if he wants to clean up. In general, I try not to imply that there's a choice involved when there is no choice. He will be cleaning up. So it's really not the time for a question. If I were to ask, I run the risk of him saying no. So instead, I look for other ways to give a bit of control back. Would you like to put the dolls away first or the blocks? Do you want to drag the basket or carry it? These are decisions that a toddler can make, not whether or not they want to clean up. I don't bribe Remy and I don't punish him. That's just not our style. I definitely don't bribe or give rewards around cleaning up because it sends a message that cleaning up is this horrible activity that you need redemption to get through. It also is not maintainable. I shouldn't have to come up with something special every time he helps out. On the flip side, I don't punish because it just creates an environment of resentment towards the cleanup process and towards me. No child comes out of being punished thinking that cleaning up is a great idea. When I grew up, this meant that nothing ever felt organized. When we were asked to clean up, my sister and I just shoved everything into a closet, closed the doors, and hoped for the best. Nothing ever felt clean, it just felt away. I've made sure there's a home for everything, and that the home remains fairly consistent. This way, when I say to him, "Where does this belong?" he knows and he can put it away. This is crucial because the more stuff, the bigger the mess. Take a page out of the Montessori playbook and only offer up a few things. Not only will it make cleaning up a lot easier, but it'll also boost your child's playtime. I present a limited number of toys or activities in a non-cluttered way, and then I rotate the items. This way, the act of cleaning up never becomes a marathon and too overwhelming for Remy. When I was teaching, we always had a cleanup song. We'd learn a song by the Beatles or Bob Marley, and then we'd all sing the song as we pitched in and cleaned up. As soon as I started the song, that was the trigger for kids to start cleaning. Remy's not singing yet, but I am still using a cleanup song that is associated with the act. I started singing it from day one. Clean up, everybody, everybody, everywhere. We've gone with the Barney cleanup song, but eventually we'll move on to something else. I've seen all sorts of cleanup games, and how successful they are is usually dependent upon what a particular child finds motivating. A lot of these cleanup games center around being timed, and yes, kids do find this motivating. However, I won't be using any of the timed games for cleanup because I don't like the way that kids start to act in a frenzy when they're timed. They start throwing things around and stop caring for their toys. Instead, I'm using the cleanup time as another point of fun connection. Sometimes I put things on his head. Sometimes I count blocks in a funny voice. Sometimes I purposely do the wrong thing to see if he catches me. I smile, I encourage, I hug, and I try to make it feel warm and light. So those are the 10 strategies we've been using, and they've been pretty helpful. Every time he cleans up, I'm super proud of him. But I bet some of you have a few tricks up your sleeve, and I'd love for you to leave them down in the comment section so we can start a collection. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, please subscribe and hit that notification bell to be part of our little learning community. We'll be putting out videos on play and learning and literacy every week. Thanks for watching.